This video is going to focus on solving quadratic word problems. We are going to have to convert some of the sentences into equations. And so a couple of hints that'll help you. If you see the words more than, think added to. And if you see the words less than or fewer than, think subtracted from. Also, the area for a rectangle is length times width. Let's practice translating some sentences before we get into actual word problems. There are 7 less sodas than waters. Okay, we need to write this as a math equation. Anytime you see less than and every word in between, think subtracted from. So 7 is going to be subtracted from waters. So we would write this as W minus 7. And what does that equal? Well, the other thing we're talking about here is sodas. So sodas equals W minus 7. All right, what about the second example? There are 4 times the number of people wearing blue. The number of people wearing blue is our one variable here. So 4 times the number of people wearing blue. Okay, well, what's that equal? The only other thing they mention in here is the number of people wearing yellow. All right, what about this last example? I sold 8 more brownies than 3 times the number of cookies. So we see more than. Anytime you see more than, you can replace that with added to. So 8 is going to be added to 3 times the number of cookies. So 3 times cookies. So 8 is going to be added to 3 times cookies. And then what else am I talking about in this sentence? I'm talking about brownies. The length of a rectangle is 5 feet longer than its width. If the area is 126 feet squared, find its dimensions. Okay, we know that area is 126, and we know that the area of a rectangle is length times width. We need to use that first sentence to write length or width in terms of the other dimension, and then we can solve. What I mean is, let's interpret that first sentence and let's convert it into a math equation. So the length of a rectangle is 5 feet longer than its width. Longer than or more than means added to. So if 5 is going to be added to W, what's that equal to? Well, the only other thing it mentions in the sentence is length. So length is 5 added to W. We are going to replace this length up here with this W plus 5 down here. That means we are going to have 126 equals W plus 5 times W. And now we solve for W. All right, let's distribute our W. And now this is a quadratic. In order to solve quadratics, we can factor, we can use quadratic formula, or we can complete the square. I'm going to factor these. All of these examples should be factorable. If you want to factor something, you need to have it equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract my 126 over to the other side. And now I can factor this. So you're going to think to yourself, what 2 numbers multiply to 126 and add to 5? This one took me a while because 126 is a bigger number than what we normally deal with, but 14 times 9 is 126. Or let's specify positive 14 times negative 9 is negative 126. Positive 14 plus negative 9 is positive 5. So we factored this. Set each factor equal to 0, and you'll get that W equals negative 14, and W equals 9. We can't have negative width. You can't say, oh, I went negative 14 miles today. No, you ran 9 miles. Or I guess in this case we're dealing with feet. So width is 9 feet. Make sure you include units because this is a word problem. We're looking for the dimensions though, so we can't just stop there at what the width is. We also need to know what the length is because dimensions are length and width. So luckily we know that length is W plus 5, so 9 plus 5. So our length is 14 feet. So we're going to do that same process on all of these problems. You'll have your area formula. One of your sentences will help you interpret L in terms of W, or vice versa. So you can substitute in this equation. You'll distribute, set it equal to 0, factor, solve. And then once you know W, you can plug that back into the L formula to find length. Let's do one more example. The area of a rectangle is 14 yards squared, and the length of the rectangle is 3 yards less than twice the width. Find the dimensions. Okay, so we know our area is 14. Area is length times width. What else do we know? Okay, the length of the rectangle is 3 yards less than twice the width. Remember, less than, we can think subtracted from. So 3 will be subtracted from twice the width. 3 will be subtracted from twice the width. L equals. And now I can replace the L in the area formula with 2W minus 3 and solve from there. So 14 equals 2W minus 3 times W. We're going to factor this, but before we can factor, I want to distribute my W and subtract my 14 over to the other side. You cannot say W equals 14 here and then whatever this equal to 14 is. You cannot do that unless this was a 0. It's not a 0, so that's why we had to distribute and subtract the 14 over. And now we have to factor. I'm going to use the bottoms up method to factor, but you can factor however you want to. Okay, those are my factors. Set each factor equal to 0 and you'll get the width is 7/2, or we can use the decimal 3.5 yards. And we'll also get that width equals -2. We can't have negative lengths and distances, so ignore that. Dimensions means we need to have length and width. So in order for me to figure out what the width is, in order for me to figure out what the length is, I need to replace this 3.5 in for my length formula. So L equals 2 times 3.5 minus 3, and L equals 4. Don't forget to include units because this is a word problem.